السلام عليكم، ازيكم يا شباب؟ اخباركم ايه؟ تعالوا نكمل كده بارت 2 من شابتر 8. بس نحل الاول كده على بارت 1. Where did Raisindel wait for it to be 2 o'clock؟ اختار يستنى فين؟ يا ترى by the mansion, by the drawbridge gate next to the castle, inside the castle of Zenda, outside the room where the king was imprisoned. شكل الأسئلة يحير، صح؟ by the drawbridge. تمام. Why couldn't Johann open the door for Sapt and his men as planned؟ يا ترى ليه ما قدرش يفتح الباب؟ He was helping the Duke in his fight with Michael أو with Rupert. Raisindel has asked Antoinette to cry for help at 2 o'clock. Why does she do it earlier؟ اللي خلقها تصرخ في ميعاد بدري عن المتفق عليه. She is being attacked by Rupert. Sapt and his men would go in and tie up any servants who didn't want to help the king. Nothing went as Raisindel had planned first because Antoinette de Maupin called for help an hour earlier. Why did Rupert strike his sword at Johann? He believes that Johann was Raisindel's spy. Why did Rupert and Michael fight each other? Rupert wanted to punish Antoinette. Who killed the Duke? Rupert Hanzo. Why did Raisindel kill the Gautier with a sword and not with a gun? He didn't want to make any noise. How did Raisindel get the keys to the king's prison? He took them from the Gautier clothes, who got killed in the first room of the king's prison. Persimmon, who got killed in the room where the king was. The doctor and teacher, who got wounded while Raisindel was trying to save the king. The king and Raisindel. It was lucky that teacher didn't have gun. If he had a gun, he would have shot Raisindel dead. What did the doctor do to save the king's life? He held Richard from behind for some time. Why didn't the king fight Richard directly? The king was ill from illness and any chains. How did the king help Raisindel in the fight against Richard? By pushing a chair against Richard or into Richard. How did the king get hurt? Richard struck him with his sword. What happened to the king while Raisindel and his men were trying to save him? He was hurt, but he was still alive. When did the king push the chair against Richard's leg? Richard found it hard to stand up. What would have happened if the king hadn't helped Raisindel? Richard would have killed Raisindel. تعال نحل على part 2. Rupert was standing in the middle of the bridge with his sword ready to fight Michael. What did Antoinette tell Rupert when he came back to fight Michael? The Duke was killed by him. What did Rupert do when Antoinette pointed a gun at him? He quickly jumped into the water below the bridge. How did Rupert manage to escape after he had killed Michael? He jumped into the moat pillow and swam away. Why couldn't Resendel catch Report in the moat? He swam faster than Resendel. How did Report get a horse to escape? He took it from a boy. What did Report blame Resendel for? For not following his plan. ما مشيش ورا الخطة بتاعته. What did Resendel tell Report about the king? The king was hurt, but he was still alive. Report would have killed Resendel if Fritz hadn't arrived on a horse carrying a gun. Why did Report ride away instead of fighting Resendel? He knew he couldn't fight Resendel and Fritz. Why didn't Fritz go after Report as Resendel asked him? He saw that Resendel didn't look well. What happened to Report at the end? He escaped. Antoinette decided to warn Resendel of everything Michael wanted to do because she didn't like his evil plan. Why did Duke Michael invite Antoinette de Maupin to Ruritania to attend the coronation? Duke Michael didn't let Antoinette de Maupin leave the castle in order to prevent her from sending letter to Resendel. How could Antoinette continue to send a letter to Resendel with the help of Johann? Rupert couldn't understand that Resendel was pretending to be the king for the good of Ruritania. Why did it take a long time for Sept and his men to enter the mansion? Johann couldn't open the door. The boy told the Princess Draken that the king was behind the tree. What did Resendel and Sept tell Flavia when she came near the trees of the tree? Resendel wasn't the real king. Where did Resendel stay when he came back in the castle? In the room where the king was imprisoned. Who did the people of Sterlos think had killed the Duke, the king? تعالوا نشوف مع بعض بارت 3 آخر بارت في الستوري. unseen غير مرئي أو خفي. bring brought يحضر. get better يتحسن. prisoner سجين. lock up يحبس أو يحتجز. بو ينحني. brave شجاع. bravery شجاعة. whisper يهمس. beat يهزم. chest صدر. apologize يعتذر. duties واجباته بتاخد do. fall asleep بستغرق في النوم. shape شكل. passenger راكب أو مسافر. explaining شرح أو تفسير. disappointed محبط. photograph صورة فوتوغرافية. amazement دهشة أو استغراب. excuse عذر أو حجة. طيب نشوف مع بعض كده إيه اللي هيحصل. I watched as she walked away. Now my game was nearly at the end. All that day Fritz and I waited in the forest while the princess stayed in the castle with the king. That night, when it was dark, Fritz led me to the castle where I stayed, unseen in the room that had been the king's prison. Johann brought me food and told me what he knew. The king was getting better, and I had seen the princess with Sabt, and the March Strakens had returned to Sturluson. Johann also said that everyone was talking about the strange prisoner of Zinda and who he could be. Some said he was an English friend of the king who has who had heard about the Duke's plans, so the Duke had locked him up to stop him from speaking to the king. Later that evening, Fritz came to me and said the king wanted to see me. So I went to his room, where he was lying in bed, with a doctor next to him. He looked weak and tired, but smiled when he saw me. Cousin, my friend, you are injured too. We are always the same, you and I. I smiled and bowed down before him. I want to thank you, he said. I hope that tomorrow you would come with me to Stirling and tell everyone about the brave things that you have done. But Seb tells me that this is not possible. He is right, sir. My work in your country is complete. Very well, I return to Stirling alone. People know that the king was injured, so they won't be surprised to see me looking a little different. But you have taught me something, Cousin Rodolphe. You have shown me what a true king should be, he said. I'd happily help you again, sir, I said, and I meant it, thinking that perhaps I would need to. Nobody knew where Rupert had disappeared to, and the thought of the man who had almost beaten me still made my heart beat louder in my chest. كنت غاضب جدا لأن أنا ما قدرتش آخد حقي من روبارت قدر يهرب. The princess has asked to see you too, said the king. She can come in now. Does she know everything? I whispered before she arrived. She does, the king answered. The princess came into the room and I bowed down to her. It seems you have tricked me, she said, but not unkindly. I'd like to apologize to you for this, I said. You don't need to apologize, you should thank you. I should thank you for all you have done for Mauritania, she said. I have learned all about duties and responsibilities, I said to her. It's a lesson I'll never forget. اتعلمت المسؤولية من الموقف اللي حصل لي. And you will never forget how you have helped the king, she replied. The king smiled, then closed his eyes and fell asleep. And the doctor said it was best if I left him. I would, and left the people who would shape the future of Mauritania, not knowing that I'd never see the king, the princess, or the port ever again. A few hours later, Sabt and Fritz brought down to me as I got on the train to a small station near the border with Mauritania. The other passengers on the train must have thought an important person in a large coat and hat was about to leave their country. كان متخفي كالعادة. But it was only I, representing an English gentleman. When I finally returned to England, I had some explaining to do. My brother Rupert and his wife Rose told me that everyone had been looking for me, and Rose was very disappointed when I told her I hadn't written a book. At least the ambassador has a job for you soon, she said. He now knows which country he will be sent to. Where is that? Rarity. Sir Jacob Pardail is to be the British ambassador in Stirling. ومع كده إن هو هيحل محل مين مين لما كان بيحكم في الوقت ده أو كان مكانه لورد توبهام. I don't think it would be a good idea for me to work there, I said. But you promised you would take the job, cried Rose. You are right, but please look at this, I said, showing them a photograph in a newspaper which showed the king's coronation. There was I, with Sabt, Fritz, Michael, and the princess. Rupert and Rose looked at it in amazement. Yes, you look very like the king of Mauritania, said Rose. But it's just an excuse. You could have become an ambassador yourself one day. If you don't go, you will never be anyone important. I knew, however, that I didn't need to go. I had been something far more important than an ambassador. I had been a king. I remembered and understood the words Rose had said to me all those months ago. A person with a position in society has responsibilities. But even without a position in society, we will all we all have a duty. ده الدرس الموجود في الستوري. We all have a duty to help other people when we can. And we all become better people for doing so. يبقى ده المورال بتاع الستوري. We all have a duty to help other people when we can and we all become better people for doing so. تعال نحل الأسئلة مع بعض. What did Sabt ask Johan and Antoinette to do؟ يا ترى طلب منهم يعملوا إيه؟ To tell to guard the secret about the real king. Sabt's men were told that the king was wounded while he was fighting to rescue his friend. What were the people of Stirling told to justify Michael's death? The king had to kill him to rescue his friend. Sabt asked the princess to come alone to see the king behind the tree because he didn't want Marsh's dragons to know about Rysindel. Sabt had the real king taken from his prison with his face covered as he didn't want his men or the servant to see who the prisoner really was. What did Sabt's men and the servant think happened to the king and to the prisoner? The king was wounded while rescuing the prisoner. Who did people of Steros think Rysindel could be? An English friend of the king's. Why did Rysindel wait in the forest until dark to go to the castle? He didn't want anyone to see him. How did Rysindel teach the king how to be a real king? He took the responsibilities as king seriously. If Rysindel had continued to pretend to be the king, Duke Michael would have married Antoinette de Maubin while taking the crown. He'd taken the crown and killed the king. Why didn't Rysindel remain the king? The king was still alive. Why was the king very grateful to Rysindel? He taught him how to be a real king. Who brought Princess Flavia from Tottenham to see the king? Marches to Rickens. Why was the princess grateful to Rysindel? He saved the king's life and the crown. Why did Sab tell the king that it was impossible for Rysindel to go back to Stirlingshire? People would mistake him for the king. Why did Rose feel very disappointed with Rysindel? He refused to work with Sir Jacob. Rysindel refused to work for Sir Jacob in Britannia because there would be a problem as Rysindel looked like the king. What did Rysindel learn from his adventure? How to shoulder responsibility, shoulder يتحمل. What does Rysindel teach the real king? What a real king should be. كده القصة انتهت. سواء يسألنا أحداث يسألنا فوكاب، احنا قرينا كل الفوكاب وتوظيفها، خدنا كل الأحداث وحلينا عليها، فاحنا ريدي لأي حاجة تيجي في القصة بإذن الله. ربنا معانا بإذن الله في اللي جاي.